Before the sun rises, when the air is coolest and even the birds are quiet, a line appears in the dust outside a small village in Burkina Faso. It is not painted, not fenced, not paved. It is a promise. Neighbors mark it with wooden stakes and scraps of twine, measuring by footsteps in memory. From a seasonal streambed at the low edge of the valley to a cluster of homes on higher ground, the line stretches for 1,000 meters. It looks simple. It is anything but simple. Along this line, a community intends to carry water to people, not people to water. Along this line, they intend to bend the drought to their will. Listen closely to the first sounds of the day. A shovel bites dry soil. A pick loosens laterite, the iron-hard crust that has guarded the ground for ages. Hands, many hands, move as if guided by a single thought. Elders watch the slope and argue with friendly stubbornness about gradients, because water obeys gravity and gravity listens to no one. Young men and women settle into a steady rhythm, shoulders rising and falling like a breathing earth. Mothers move between the trench and the fields, organizing, measuring, setting the pace. A child carries pebbles in a small basket and asks, with the courage of the very young, whether this trench will really stop the sky from forgetting to rain. The answer is gentle and firm. The trench cannot command the sky. But it can command what the ground does with the little water it receives. What they are building is practical and elegant. Near the streambed, a small pump house will shelter a solar-powered pump. Panels will catch the harsh midday sun and turn it into steady movement. The pump will lift water to a storage tank raised on sturdy legs at the village's highest point. From the tank, the water will travel by gravity through a buried pipe along that 1,000-meter line into homes, a clinic room, a small schoolyard tap, and spurs reaching toward communal gardens. None of this is theoretical. It is a plan distilled from decades of lived experience with scarcity, stitched together from practices that have worked in other places and tailored to the stubborn specifics of this land. But the village understands a truth that engineers sometimes forget. A pipe alone cannot defeat a drought. It must be part of a system that starts in the soil and ends in a meal. While the trench grows longer, the fields begin to change. Farmers carve shallow, crescent-shaped basins in the earth to collect the brief rains and guide them toward roots. They dig small planting pits and fill them with compost and manure, creating pockets of fertility that hold moisture long after the clouds are gone. On the contours of the slope, they lay low stone lines to slow the rush of stormwater, forcing it to sit, to breathe, to soak. The landscape, once a flat expanse where water sprinted away, now becomes a patient teacher, teaching water to linger. This is not a charity story. It is a competence story. The village forms a water committee with a simple charter: track the tank level every morning and evening, post the readings on a chalkboard outside the store, and agree ahead of time on what to do when the level falls faster than expected. 2 women, known for their fairness, keep the logbook. A young man who apprenticed as an electrician in the nearest town takes responsibility for the solar controller. A group of teenagers practice how to clean intake screens and replace worn gaskets. An elder who once served on a cooperative explains why rules must be boring to work well. Water is power. Boring rules make powerful things safe. The first metal pipe sections arrive on the back of a truck that looks older than anyone can remember. Children greet it as if it were a traveling circus. The plumber, a quiet woman with sun-browned forearms, shows everyone how each joint needs not only strength but trust. She uses primer and solvent on the plastic mains, wraps thread tape where metal meets plastic, tests each connection with a hand pump before it goes into the ground. She refuses to bury doubt. The villagers notice this and adopt it as a principle: never bury doubt. The tank rises on 4 legs that seem too slender until the cross-bracing goes in and the structure becomes a rigid lattice. The tank itself is not huge. It does not need to be. The plan relies on daily rhythm, not infinite storage. In the cool mornings, the pump fills the tank while demand is low. In the hottest hours, when the panels are strongest, the pump replenishes whatever the taps have taken. In the evenings, the flow slows, and the system rests. Humans adjust themselves to the sun every day. It feels only fair to ask the water to do the same. Meanwhile, the fields begin to remember green. In the planting pits, the first shoots of millet push up like tiny flags of hope. Near the stone lines, runoff no longer gouges the soil. It pauses, it listens, it joins. Families replant rows of native trees that know how to live with heat and wind. The trees will not give quick shade, but they will anchor the soil and soften the air for years to come. In the gardens near the village, drip lines appear like quiet handwriting across the beds. Buckets and watering cans still have their place, old tools rarely retire fully. But the drip lines make a promise: even when the day is unkind, a trickle can be enough. This system touches more than land. It touches time. A woman who used to walk for hours to a distant well now spends that time in her garden and with her daughter reviewing school lessons. A boy who once missed class because his morning chores were a marathon learns algebra with a clear head. A grandmother starts a small soap-making venture because water is available when she needs it, not when chance allows. The clinic attendant, who used to ration hand-washing water like medicine, now encourages it as prevention. Time saved is not merely convenience. It is human possibility. There are missteps. Early on, a hairline crack in a joint near the tank only reveals itself when the midday sun heats the pipe and pressure rises. The leak looks like a harmless glisten until the logbook shows a pattern. The afternoon level falls faster than expected. The committee shuts the line for a short time, finds the flaw, fixes it, and then does something clever. They paint a thin ring of bright color around every joint they double-check, so that during a quick inspection they can see at a glance which connections have earned their trust twice. A teenager suggests keeping a small spare parts library in a lockbox. The idea seems odd until a windstorm snaps a valve handle and the spare saves a day of waiting. Social questions flow with the water. Who pays for maintenance, and how? The village chooses a system that is simple and fair. Each household contributes a small monthly amount, scaled by size and ability. A small surcharge on produce sold at the market garden goes into the same fund. The treasurer posts expenses and receipts on the chalkboard so that sunlight, the best disinfectant, shines on the numbers. When an argument arises over one compound using more than its share, the committee does not shame anyone. It calls a meeting under the shade tree and restates the rules. They agree to install a simple flow restrictor at the disputed tap to even out usage during peak hours. It is not punitive. It is engineering in service of peace. The project's reach extends beyond the obvious. Micro-entrepreneurs appear like seedlings after rain. Someone buys a small mill that can grind grain with less water. Someone else starts a bicycle repair service, because roads are dusty and bicycles breathe dust. A group of mothers experiment with drought-tolerant leafy greens that can be harvested quickly and cooked with little water. A young person who loves numbers starts keeping simple records of yields and rainfall, posting weekly summaries that turn the chalkboard into a community dashboard. Data becomes a shared language, not a private secret. And because the village refuses to let the drought define the story, it invests in beauty. The water tower, functional and plain, gets a coat of paint in the colors of the soil at dawn and at dusk. The pump house door carries the names of everyone who volunteered a full day of labor. A small mural near the school shows a child filling a cup for an elder. Beauty is not a luxury. It is a vote of confidence in the future. As the system matures, the village shifts from construction to stewardship. Instead of asking what needs to be built, they ask what needs to last. They set a schedule to flush the lines to reduce sediment buildup. They clean solar panels with soft cloths after dust storms. They trim grass around the base of the tank to discourage pests. They teach primary school students how to read the level gauge and how to convert a quiet float into a number on the board. A visiting cousin from the city marvels that children here treat water math with the same seriousness as spelling. It makes sense. Spelling helps tell stories. Water math helps keep stories going. Drought does not give up easily. A year arrives when the short rains start late and end early. The stream's baseflow vanishes for days at a time. The borehole that supplements the intake keeps the system alive, but the chalkboard shows a sobering pattern: the tank never quite reaches full by evening. The committee activates a drought plan that was agreed to while the skies were generous. Garden watering shifts to early morning and late afternoon only. The clinic and school taps are prioritized. Households spread out laundry days. Farmers move to drought-tolerant crops and reduce plant density so that each root has more water to claim. A few families test a method they heard about from an agronomist who visited months earlier: shallow furrows covered with straw mulch to reduce evaporation. The plan is not heroic. It is humble. Humility is what works. In the midst of this tight season, something surprising happens. Yields do not collapse. They dip, but they do not fall off a cliff. The soil, fed by compost in the pits and guarded by stone lines and mulch, holds longer. Trees planted seasons before cast young shade that soothes tender shoots. A harvest festival still happens, smaller than they hoped, larger than they feared. The community's confidence deepens. They learn again what the elders already knew. One big solution is fragile. A set of many small solutions, woven together, is resilient. The story reaches even farther. Neighboring villages visit to watch the morning routine at the tank and the evening reading on the board. They ask tough questions. How much did it cost? How often do things break? Who decides priorities when water is tight? The hosts answer without pretending perfection. They point to their spare parts box. They point to their rulebook and the signatures beneath it. They point to the kids who can read the gauge without help. And then they step aside and let the visitors follow the pipe to the gardens, to see green where there used to be dust. The most convincing argument is not a speech. It is a plate of vegetables in the dry season. Now imagine you are walking along the 1,000-meter line at dusk. The light softens. The tank hums as the last sunlight pours into the panels. A woman fills a bucket, sets it on her head, and walks with a steady grace learned over a lifetime. But her route is shorter now, and her day is different. A boy rides past on a bicycle with a small roll of tape and a wrench in his basket, headed to help check a joint. The plumber passes him on foot, quiet as always, carrying nothing but a pair of gloves. At the edge of a field, a farmer kneels to press mulch around a seedling. He is not saving a plant. He is saving time. The transformation shows up in places statistics rarely look. In a classroom, a girl reads aloud without the slow, exhausted cadence of someone who spent the morning on the road to a well. In a compound kitchen, a grandmother instructs a granddaughter on how much water a pot of millet needs when humidity is low. In a small shop, a ledger shows a steady trickle of income that used to be a drought of empty columns. In a courtyard, an argument flares and cools quickly, resolved by the quiet power of written rules and known routines. Stability is the background music of progress. Several months later, the community decides to test a new idea. They designate a small patch of land near the tank as a training plot. There, they try out different mulch thicknesses, alternate planting densities, and compare hand watering to drip feed under the same conditions. Each trial is simple, cheap, and easy to repeat. They write down results in a notebook and share them at village meetings. Curiosity becomes habit. Habit becomes culture. Culture becomes resilience. One evening, as clouds gather on the horizon, the committee chair stands before the chalkboard and writes down the day's last tank level. The number is not the highest of the season, nor the lowest. It is enough. The chair looks out at faces that have grown lean and strong through years of learning by doing. She thanks the crew that scrubbed the panels after the dust storm, the children who reported a small leak before it became a large one, and the elders who insisted that every rule be argued and agreed before the first bolt was tightened. Then she asks a simple question that has become a ritual. What did we learn today that will make tomorrow easier? The answers come from many voices. A shorter hose reduces waste at the garden spigot. A double knot on the pump house latch keeps goats out. A shaded bucket loses less water to the air. None of these ideas are glamorous. All of them are effective. As the first drops of rain finally arrive, they fall not on a passive landscape but on a prepared one. They slip into the planting pits and spread through compost like ink on blotting paper. They gather behind stone lines and percolate instead of fleeing. They wash dust from leaves that are ready to drink. The rain does not redeem the system. The system redeems the rain. You have been watching a village refuse to accept the story that Drought writes. You have seen how a 1,000-meter line became more than a pipe. It became a spine supporting dozens of small, smart decisions about soil, crops, time, rules, and trust. It became a classroom where every day offered a new lesson and every mistake was allowed to pay for its own repair. It became a place where technology listened to people, not the other way around. Before we close, consider a few questions. If you lived here, which role would you choose first? The person who reads the gauge, the person who checks the joints, the person who teaches the next child how to mulch a seedling, or the person who argues for fair rules before a problem appears? In your hometown, what is the equivalent of a 1,000-meter lifeline, something small enough to build and big enough to matter? When you think about drought and climate stress, do you imagine a single rescue or a fabric woven from many threads? After seeing this story, which thread are you ready to add? Thank you for spending time with AfriPol Lens. If this story moved you, if it expanded your sense of what is possible when people act together with patience and skill, support this work by subscribing to the channel. Add your voice in the comments, because stories grow stronger when more people tell them. Share this video with someone who believes that small, smart steps can change the shape of a hard season. Your attention is a resource. When you direct it towards stories of resilience, you help build more of them. Now, a final word to the community we have just visited in spirit. Your work deserves to be seen. Not because it is perfect, but because it is honest. May your mornings be cool, your afternoons productive, and your evenings restful. May your tank be steady, your joints tight, your fields forgiving, and your rules boring in the best way. May your line across the dust continue to be a promise kept. And now to you, the viewer. What part of this story surprised you most? The technology, the organization, or the quiet discipline of daily readings and small repairs? What would you like us to explore next? The science of soil that holds water, the design of village-scale solar pumps, or the ways communities write rules that last? Tell us in the comments. Your questions shape our next journey. Thank you for watching AfriPol Lens. Like, subscribe, and join us for more stories where determination meets design, and where communities write their own future one careful decision at a time.